Many of you will have heard of the Auckland Business Chamber, or previously known as the Chamber of Commerce. Been around for 168 years, and we do the sort of things that chambers do around the country, around the world, which is business advice, business advocacy, business support. What is unique about the Auckland Business Chamber is that we have a division called Employment Solutions, which I head. Our office base is out in Manukau, and we are all about resolving one of the biggest issues for employers, and that is their inability to find staff. So if you can't find staff, you can't grow your business. And this is an issue today. I don't know an industry not skills-starved, but it was also an issue 20 years ago. So the Chamber made an incredibly deliberate decision not to start a personnel agency and poach staff from one organisation to put them into another organisation. We set out on a mission to grow the pool, grow the pipeline of people entering the workforce. So our entire focus around employment solutions is to work with people who are at the fringes of the labour market. How can we entice? How can we support to become work ready? And then how can we lean in to the Chamber's database and connections to the business community to open doors for people who might otherwise find it difficult to have doors open for them. So that's been our 20-year mission. And we've learned some things and we've made some mistakes, but mostly I think we probably got it right and changed some lives along the way and improved some businesses in the process, which is always our mission. So today I wanted to introduce you to Cadet Max. Cadet Max is a youth employment program. It is a partnership with Denise and the Ministry of Social Development. It was a partnership established 13 years ago. A bit of a women of prayer that we thought we might set up in South Auckland and find some young people and put them into jobs, and wow, were we on the biggest learn curve ever. But we've grown and focused with a laser beam on how it is that we can find young people 18 to 24 on benefit, feeling hopeless, feeling isolated. How can we capture and attract those young people? How can we wrap some pretty tough work readiness around them so that they are ready for us to put our brand and our reputation behind and present them to employers and support them once they're in employment. And we'll talk a little bit about the process. But to give you some stats, we placed 3,500 South Auckland youth into work over the years. And many would say these are the toughest kids. I would dispute that. I don't think they are. I think they're fabulous young people in really tough situations. Cadet Max is growing. So it grew out of Auckland. So we're in South Auckland and Central Auckland. And about 4 years ago, we moved to the Bay of Plenty, to Rotorua, Whakatane, Tauranga, and Waikato last year. One of the more interesting things is to see the regional differences in our young people. And some of that is around culture. Particularly in South Auckland, our program has a very strong Māori and Pacifica flavour to it. When you move to Tauranga, your ethnicity changes slightly. Rotorua is very, very strongly mana whenua, and but the commonalities are the same. These young people are isolated. Their sense of motivation, their sense of self-worth is challenged, and so wrapping that holistic support around them to prepare them for the workforce, the elements are still the same. Cool. So how do we do it? So I think all of us in this room would acknowledge that career advice for our young people is pretty ordinary in New Zealand, and access to quality career advice is limited. So our big focus as we get to know that young person is to figure out what is going to spin their wheels, what's going to get them out of bed on Monday morning at 6 a.m. And career advice is has to be more than a field of dreams. I want to go into this. I want to be Beyonce. I want to do whatever it is. It's got to be embedded in reality. And some of those realities are, where can you get to? What skills can you bring? What access to education can you learn? What access to employers can you reach? So it's career advice with aspiration, as well as with a reality check with our young people in a 7-day intensive induction program. And in that induction program, we are achieving 3 things. The first thing is the practical stuff, the jobs, what we call the job search toolkit. Every young person will come out with a CV, with some credit on their phone, with interview skills. They will know what their bank account number is. They'll know what their IRD number is. They'll have some form of ID. All of those incredibly practical, physical things that need to happen when somebody is job searching. Then we look at the preparedness for that interview, because the fear of failure amongst our young people is one of the largest factors that holds them back. So being prepared and confident to go to an interview, to shake somebody's hand, to look them in the eye, to answer the question, tell me about yourself, with something better than what do you want to know, is all of the kind of things that we're doing in that week. We're also obviously looking at the person. We're looking at mental health and well-being, because it doesn't matter how many skills you've got. If as a person you're not feeling confident enough, then you can't sell yourself. So it's about lifting that level of confidence, of motivation, of self-belief. And that's really the exciting magic stuff that happens. And a lot of it happens not through counselling or anything particularly intense. It happens through camaraderie, through being with other young people who have the same aspirations, who also want to get off the couch and go into work. So that's the kind of work that we're doing in that initial very intensive 7 days. The transformation from walking in grumpy, hostile, MSD made me be here, hoodie on hoodie on the head, to 7 days later, where we're putting them in front of an expo of our nearest and dearest employers, is something to witness. And I hope some of you in this room will join us. Cool. Some of the other things we do, driver licenses, I'm going to talk about it a couple of times. Driver licenses are the single biggest barrier between a young person and a job. Our estimation is that a young person with a restricted or full license can apply for 7 times more jobs than somebody without. And yet, young people coming through our door, 60% of them will not have even started on the GDLS system, which means they won't even have a learner's license. So that's a passion of mine. You never know what you're going to do with your career, but driver licenses turns out to be the thing that we can fix and the thing that we can do that makes a substantial and almost immediate difference. Obviously, the Chamber, our role is to broker with our employer community. And that's networking, that's knowing what our employers are looking for, managing their expectations a little bit, and connecting the right employer with the right young person. So not making mistakes around can they get there, is this the right fit for them. Once we put that young person into employment, sustainability is the key. So we're all about how do we keep that young person into employment. If it starts to get wobbly, the employer picks up the phone and goes, Joey hasn't shown up for 3 days, can you go and get him out of bed and find out what's going on? Or or talking with the employer who tells us this guy is fantastic, and you sit down with the young person and they go, they really hate me here. They only ever tell me when I do something wrong. And we're sitting there going, actually, you're great. They love you. So mentoring is about opening those lines of communication and being that sort of other voice that isn't your boss, somebody you can talk to. So that's Cadet Max, and we love it, and we think it's really cool. And we hope as an employer, if you're looking for staff, Cadet Max is one of the avenues to come to find those wonderful young people who need a shot. It did occur to me and us at the Chamber a long time ago that a lot of the stuff that we are doing in our induction program should have been covered off before, should have been covered off by the time these young people left school. The best research in the world says that a young person who has 7 meaningful engagements with employers while they are still at school make better choices about their subjects, about their tertiary study if they go on to it, or about their careers. And yet, as we know, schools have a interesting and sometimes not particularly sustainable or consistent connection to their business community. So Education to Employment is a Ministry of Education, Ministry of Social Development initiative that is all about bringing the world of work into schools. The Auckland Chamber looks after Auckland schools. There's 113 of them. And we have 4 employment connectors who are all about bringing that work readiness training into schools and sort of train the trainer in terms of teachers. What can you bring? How can you do good interview skills, good career advice, you know, good CVs? And how can we bring that vocational pathway into our schools to be better promoted? Because the reality is 70% of young people go into employment, not into tertiary studies. But our schools and our career advice is almost entirely built around a university pathway. So 2 sides to that equation. How can we enable schools to be better preparers of our young people? And how can we connect with an employer ecosystem around each of our high schools so that we are building that pipeline for employers, but we're also giving young people access to real people, real employers, real workplaces, real jobs. So that's the work of the Ed and M team, and I suspect we'll be doing it for years. But you know, part of the road, we're on the journey, and small steps make big changes eventually. Not my focus for today, but I did want to mention the Chamber also works with adults, so 24 and above. We've got 3 programs. Positive Pathways is about assisting people with health conditions, disabilities into the workplace. Another partnership with Denise and the MSD team. Ready to Roll is for people who are affected by redundancies or COVID or whatever is, you know, fairly highly skilled, just lost a job, haven't applied for a job for 20 years, don't have a CV, don't know where to start. And so that supports that close to the labour market group. And then New Kiwis, and again, I'm joined by my CNSST colleagues and friends who do fantastic work with our migrant and refugee community. And New Kiwis is all about supporting that migrant pathway. Great. I mentioned driver licenses and gave you some stats, and I just want to underscore the biggest issue employers have is about people showing up for work. And there's a fair amount of employers out there with a minimum criteria of a restricted or full license. And there are an awfully large number of young people without either. It is estimated there are 130,000 under licensed or unlicensed drivers in New Zealand. So they're driving, they're just driving without a license. So we have a driver license program here at the Auckland Chamber in Auckland. We have a big focus with MSD clients and lifting that driver license rate of MSD clients. We also work with the decile 1 to 3 high schools, again, enabling driver licenses to be delivered in schools. One of the lowest licensure rate is our Pacifica community, and the police hate giving licenses to hardworking Kiwis who may not have got their license. So in a MSD NZ Police Chamber partnership, we're in the Pacific churches helping people to get to the next stage. And obviously, again, with the police, they don't want to give tickets to young people because it creates a debt cycle within a whānau. So if they pull the young kid over on the side of the road and he's driving on his learners without a licensed driver in the car, instead of giving him a $200 ticket, they're giving him a voucher that says, go get your license, you've got a couple of months to do it, and let's sort this out. So some really awesome work happening around driver licenses, and when we sort of tick up to 3,000 a year, we're starting to shift the dial, I hope. Again, small steps. Last thing I wanted to mention, and this was part of the kind of brief, which is what support is out there for employers. And of the, you know, looking for your next staff person through the chamber, there's lots of support that comes with that for employers, particularly around mentoring and pre-screening and all of that sort of stuff. But one of the things we've been doing is running a webinar series about how to become a youth-ready employer. It's all about how do employers attract and engage youth? So how do we find them? Because they're pretty hard to find. How do we interview and onboard youth effectively in a current world? And once we have got them on board, how do we mentor that young person in work and hold on to them so they don't leave us? All of the services that I've described are on chamberemployment.co.nz, and there's lots of links to the appropriate people in the team. That's the chamber, and thank you so much for listening.